ISEKAI BAD!
You know, I initially wrote an introduction to this installment that would prepare you as the viewer and myself as the writer for a standard season of terrible, monotonous isekai horsecock. But this season rapidly threw itself into atypicality. Not so much in overall quality, if anything, I found myself even less attached to most series this season, as indicated in my overall discussion in my previous video. Rather, somewhere out there the stars aligned and imposed a hard limit on the wholly uninspired tripe that would be chosen for the lineup of today's topics. As far as second entries in a series go, the message might sound muddied to some, and that's fine with me, although last winter's build truly did contain some miserable trash that I'd love to rip into some other occasion. Unlike what the title might inherently insinuate, I don't make these specifically to witch hunt shows in the hopes of broadly stating that they can never be entertaining. I do it because isekai as a jumping off point frequently does present lazy, boring, and redundant results that I enjoy making fun of. This means, however, that when I'm taken by surprise and shows don't turn out to be identical to their predecessors, I not only want to give those anime an equal chance, I may want to celebrate them. And I don't think the two routes are mutually exclusive. After all, just between you and I unironically do love a lot of anime, and get angry in part to express my hope that one day the climate of the industry can change. Never say I wasn't fair. The greatest demon lord is reborn as a typical nobody. From the title alone, you might infer that it's a story about an incredibly overpowered man losing his abilities in a new life, only for the show to throw the idea out the window in seconds by having this new vessel demonstrate unfathomable power. And you'd be right. Ard Meteor was once the ruler of all the land, the demon lord Barbados, who had proved victorious, now beloved by all as their glorious leader. But he grew weary of life at the top, no obstacles left for him to find enjoyment in, no genuine friendships to speak of, so he just fucking quits. Dies, I guess, it's unclear. As young Ard Meteor, he remains in the same world once lorded over by Barbados, but some uncertain amount of time has passed and some of the magic Barbados was skilled at has become lost arts to everybody else. This means even magic that Ard finds rudimentary is actually super fucking epic, and he's still the biggest, baddest motherfucker alive despite his apparent goals. This also means that it's technically not an isekai, but it's so similar in just about every other way to its sister programming that it might as well be one. Ard's biggest goal, however, is to make friends so that he may rise to the top with his own personal posse. And by posse, I mean mostly a harem of women indebted to him. To this end, he ineptly screams at random children asking to be friends, and despite the fact that this might actually work in the world of children, they run away screaming, particularly the girls he's apparently scared of because of his implied lack of sexual or romantic experience. Despite this, he immediately doesn't have this problem ever again, even confronting some of the same people multiple times, but eventually decides to viciously stalk the mayor's daughter, Irina, because she's a tsundere elf loner he's convinced actually wants a friend deep down inside. After many failed attempts, he finally befriends her by saving her from being violently raped and killed by monsters, proving that he is a good person by meeting the baseline of human compassion and not being cool with rape and murder. Except that he's the demon lord who conquered the world, so presumably he's done his fair share of life ruination, but who really cares about that? He's nice now, he wants friends! So Irina loses any sense of individuality and becomes Ard's arm accessory henceforth, and they decide to go to Magic Academy together. Yes! Fuck yes! Oh, I was seriously getting worried there wouldn't be a Magic Academy. Phew! At Magic Academy, he watches another hot girl, Ginny the Succubus, getting harassed by men of more noble social standing than her. He once again proves to be the only good man left in the world by standing up for her and engaging in a duel with this asshole guy. Asshole guy claims to be super fucking good at fire magic, lying to people about his skill level even when actively performing the spells. This obviously makes no fucking sense because he's literally being watched by their instructor. Oh, fuck. Wolf mommy, huh? Okay. He's literally being watched by their attractive and hopefully single instructor, who I would assume can tell that he's full of shit about his skill level once he doesn't actually do what he says he can do, so what's his endgame? Ard takes notice that their instructor is somebody who previously worked under Barbados and resolves to conceal any indicator that he may be the runaway leader. Ard, being the coolest fucking guy ever that he is, retorts in battle by performing the spell Asshole Guy claims to be doing, causing Asshole Guy to soil himself while Ard simultaneously performs a protection spell on his opponent so not to incinerate him. While Ard does this, he must be thinking to himself, she'll never suspect a thing, there's no way she'll think I'm Varvatos now. She straight away thinks something's up with him, but may or may not realize yet that he's Varvatos. Then Ard and his bitches go get told to fuck off and be the meat shields in a dungeon, in part by the same asswipe that apparently didn't learn his lesson the first time. Not worried in the slightest, Ard takes this opportunity to be the only person who's ever been nice to Ginny ever and teach her to do magic that he is cool enough to make up on the spot as any typical nobody commoner would do. Something she barely seems to understand because she's been a servant most of her life, making it perfectly reasonable that she's attending a prestigious academy. Good thing they have Ard there to do everything. He even lets Irina believe she's helping cast magic alongside him. I'll say that sometimes the way he badgered the young Irina had some semblance of comedic value, but for the most part, this series is as good a jumping point as I could have asked for to once again exhibit just how imitative this shit has become. Play around with one or two aspects of the template and you've got yourself a brand new show, my friends. Isekai and the like is the anime equivalent of color swapping Sonic the Hedgehog and naming him Phonic the Porcupine. But I suppose with some extra variables randomly swapped around in your script spreadsheet, your light novel adaptation could shit out something so moderately different that I actually find something slightly pleasurable about it. In fact, those variables are so randomly spun around and displaced in this case, the show openly admits that its world building is beyond comprehension. That example is trapped in a dating sim. The world of otome games is tough for mobs. When skimming over this show, you'll find a lot of the same shit you might otherwise see in your typical isekai, but somehow the plot meanders around so much that I can't instantly predict every step throughout. Leon Buttfart, god I'm funny, is staying up all night to beat an otome game, or Japanese game targeting women audiences often focused on dating simulation for all you functioning members of society out there, because his sister demanded he complete it so she could see the end dialogue but not have to play through all its bullshit. Kind of doesn't really make sense to never play the game and only see the ending, not even sure she'd know what the fuck's going on there. So he whinges about it for hours until he finishes and gets up to grab some food. On his brief journey to the store, he slips on a used condom and dies falling down the stairs of his apartment complex, disgrace that he'll pass so uneventfully. Before he knows it, he wakes up in another world, one he begins to realize after some odd conversation is in fact the world of the otome game he just played. If God's putting people in video games after they die, then I better just stick to exclusively playing those games about having sex with a bunch of anime housewives, just to be safe. Don't judge me, you won't think I sound stupid when you're reborn in Halo, dick. So the world Leon finds himself in is extremely matriarchal, almost every woman being of a higher social class and political position with the exception of the pretty boy males born into royalty, aka the ones you try and fuck when playing. Leon concludes that he can try to live life in the background as an NPC if he just doesn't get in the way, but soon finds that the head of his family has betrothed him to an ugly woman, a fate worse than death for old Leon. He believes the only way he can evade the arrangement is to get rich without a woman's help and find his own way to prestige, mostly by enrolling in the fanciest school around where the princes go. He does this by finding a rare stash of items he remembers from IRL and a spaceship. At this point, shit goes bananas and Leon fights a big robot who's kinda chill when you get to know him, who tells Leon that people who use magic, like the ones in the game, are new humans that cause the extinction of old humans who don't know magic, and he exists to kill new humans, but Leon is a half-breed, so he can still tell the robot what to do, and then it follows him around forever. Then Leon gets to school. You know, this is taking too long. He gets involved with this girl who looks like the protagonist of the actual game, but for some reason this other girl is acting as the protagonist and has a harem of princes following her around, and Leon doesn't know why, and then this girl is the rival of the protagonist character because she's engaged to one of the princes, but in the game you can steal him from her, and she's supposed to be a bitch, but the girl who's supposed to be the protagonist but isn't talks to her privately and finds out that she's actually pretty cool, and Leon keeps saying some shit about how he doesn't want to get involved in main character stuff but keeps getting roped into it, and I can't tell for sure if he's getting his own harem right now, and maybe the not protagonist girl who's acting like the protagonist with a male harem is another person from IRL fucking up the game world. Why is there a robot war? Leon doesn't even know. If you don't understand, that's okay. I doubt I have that much better a grasp, but I just didn't want to eloquently explain this for 5 more minutes anyway. It seems Leon will of course have no choice but to get involved in the main character's lives. He already is by episode 2, but I'll admit it's kind of unique that there's some kind of mystery being proposed here. And we get to see it from Leon's perspective, who is honestly refreshingly not overpowered for no reason and actually kind of builds his way up to epic main character in semi-believable anime ways. Like sure, he has money and an invincible robot pretty fast, but the further he climbs the hierarchy, the more he still has to deal with being seen as an uppity commoner. And it's sometimes pretty funny to hear his inner narration where he begrudgingly reminds himself of plot details of this game that he never wanted to fucking play in the first place. It's close to being an isekai about a guy dealing with being sent to a comically unfortunate life. Certainly better than Tsukimichi in this way by a mile, but I don't know if I'd call it better than Dungeon of the Black Company. Listen to me ranking this shit like I'm in love with it. Fuck me. Things only get harder for me from here as this overwhelmingly mediocre season slowly deconstructs my preconceived notions about the isekai family by, with some level of holy intervention no doubt, somehow averaging a lofty entertainment score over the season at large, although I wouldn't describe it with flying colors. For example, when you hear Skeleton Knight in another world, I doubt you'd be alone in thinking Overlord, and in many ways I don't think it's unfounded. Now, this video isn't about it, but I just think it's important to preface I think Overlord is dog shit for the most part. And while Skeleton Knight isn't blowing Overlord out into the stars, it focuses on a character significantly more good-willed. Both are about some dickwad that plays video games too much who gets reborn into their favorite game as a skeleton man with a lot of power. While Overlord emphasizes heavily and repeatedly that Ainz is super fucking strong and kills anything in his way without flinching, eventually becoming less human and more demonic conqueror with each successive triumph, Skeleton Knight is basically just a guy calling himself Ark, trying to do quests without alerting everybody around him that he's a skeleton. Ark reflects after murdering some rapist bandits that he's surprised how little remorse he feels for it, so maybe there's some indication that this is going down the same route of withering humanity in our protagonist, but I'm not certain. Neither are complicated exactly, it just depends on whether you prefer an evil skeleton effortlessly defeating armies or a nice skeleton effortlessly protecting little girls from monsters. Since I'm under the impression Skeleton Knight takes itself less seriously, I pick that one. Overlord is for people who aren't funny. You don't see Ainz smoking a cigar and sitting in a hot tub, probably, I forget, maybe it does. Both have their share of being gross though. Ainz is shadowed by Albedo, an NPC he had initially reprogrammed to be madly in love with him, causing her entire presence in the show to revolve around simping for him. Same kind of harem shit you get in millions of anime now, basically. Skeleton Knight doesn't seem to have this, but to ensure that it still maintains a level of unacceptability within public discourse, it opens with that rape scene I mentioned. Like, first frame. While the rapists needlessly remark about how their victim just pissed herself in fear, Ark cuts them down in one foul swoop. And while I'm all for comically decimating rapists in cartoons, I find it a lazy and creepy way to tell the viewer that character equal bad. As if I can't tell somebody is reprehensible unless they're willing to gang rape teenagers. Seriously, I don't know why this is such a common idea in anime. Only made worse when there are some clearly eye-catching scenes thrown in providing a mixed message of this is bad but also kinda hot. Realistically, this is not a major part of Skeleton Knight's run so far, more of a nitpick ultimately. Most of Skeleton Knight is about more innocuous issues, like saving townspeople from rampaging mythical beasts. As I mentioned, Ark is also your typical overpowered protagonist facing no trouble in dispatching of his enemies. But unlike in Overlord where this is constantly flung in your face with grandiose presentation, Ark's methods consist almost solely of swinging a big sword down and crushing whatever faces him, a literal one-punch sword deal. Or more I should say discount guts, lacking some of the weight each attack in Berserk accentuates, but still kind of fun with how nimbly Ark just tears through 4 people like paper. In the end, I'm surprised at how inoffensive I find Skeleton Knight, and while I'm hoping Ark will be a bit sillier as the intro seems to imply, the show is reminiscent of Hortensia Saga of Winter 2021, just a harmless show about characters going through RPG quests. Given that so many of these inscrutably successful isekai hold themselves up with some forthrightly awful CGI, it's a net gain that Skeleton Knight, as well as others this season, does not rely on that and actually draws the monsters Ark fights. The fights aren't impressive, but they don't make me want to blind myself, so that's a plus. But I'll always know that the best skeleton show will someday appear above the horizon in the form of literally Sans Undertale being in a shitty isekai. Can't wait. RPG Real Estate supports a tantamount flavor profile as Skeleton Knight this season, as my opening suspicions jump straight to comparing it to 2021's Dragon Goes House Hunting, a show I generally enjoyed and never made a video on, similar to Spring 2021's complete catalog aside from Yasuke. I'll get to it maybe. But short description, it's about a dragon that can't live with other dragons, so he hires somebody to show him houses he could buy, and we watch him deal with other RPG monsters' lifestyles. It was cute and creative in showing us the home lives of creatures like slimes. RPG Real Estate is the same fantasy setting, but our lead characters are moe girls who run their own real estate office. Kotone Kazairo moves to the city to join their agency, but before that she needs their assistance finding an apartment. She settles on living in the subhuman district as her coworker Fa's neighbor, Fa being a dragon girl herself with the mental capacity of a toddler. She reminds me of Noella from Drugstore in Another World, meaning I enjoy her bombastic and brain-dead approach to everything. What can I say? Loud, stupid children are funny. Kotone herself is a perfectly average human being whose goals I forget and personality consists of being just barely observant enough to impress her borderline irresponsible colleagues to the point where I'm not sure how they kept this business alive. Our other 2 cute girls doing cute things are admitted exhibitionist, cool-headed but easily flustered famous warrior of days gone, Rakira, and priestly, high-achieving, and in desperate need of another job, Rufuria. There really isn't a lot of meat that goes into a single episode of RPG Real Estate, because unlike Dragon Goes House Hunting, it's not actually preoccupied with cleverly joking about what the inside of a harpy's house might look like. It's really a slice of life taking place in a magic real estate office where the wholesome everyday activities of our girls are documented alongside their clientele who, at least by episode 1, aren't that wild. Their first client is some priest elf lady that used to work closely with the king, leading Rufuria to try and give her a mansion for several minutes, or show off this place with the selling point high enough to jump out and kill yourself if need be, until Kotone deduces that the lady actually wants a low-key house in the boonies because she's retiring, or really, from Kotone's perspective, because she likes the flowers Kotone stole from her apartment complex's shared bath. Fa gets really excited about the flowery house Kotone sells too, running up to her with a flower and screaming, "Flower! Great job, Fa! You found a fucking flower there, ever an idiot, get a grip!" But seriously, I can see why some people might find RPG real estate boring, but if you're like me and can get amused by just about any cute girls doing cute shit show, then I don't feel like there's anything to seriously take issue with here. Worst accusation I could give it is that it's slow to the point of maybe coming off as patronizing if you're a big asshole, but I'm not going to say these characters are identical clones to other cute anime girls, even if one could easily find parallel attributes in all of them somewhere. Not the best the genre has to offer. I'd say Dragon Goes House Hunting sticks to the premise more vividly and certainly makes better use of its fantasy world, but deserving of a quick watch if you're craving this sort of thing regardless. Oh, also, I don't think it's an isekai, but it's my channel, and if we're gonna have a conversation every time I pad out the video with similar fantasy settings or shitty harems, we're gonna have problems, so don't. And then, like a rabid chimpanzee throwing an ignited gasoline-covered pipe wrench directly into my smoking cog-filled brain, progress is halted, and Don't Hurt Me, My Healer irrefutably proves me to be the halfwit you see today, punishing my arrogance and placing it amongst toilet scum medieval fantasy we all, 100%, without a doubt, are in agreement is terrible, by being one of the greatest works to come out of the season. Period. No foolin'. And then I see it has lower ratings than many less deserving series this season. You ungrateful motherfuckers, I admit my faults and come back with open arms to regale you of Don't Hurt Me, My Healer's status quo repudiation, and this is what I'm met with? A cretin I might be, but irredeemable is a better word for you who would fail to see this for what it is. Hilarious. Where to begin with Don't Hurt Me, My Healer? I think I have nothing but good things to say. Loosely, it's about Carla the elf healer and her knight friend Alvin, but to call her a healer is about as misleading as it is to call Alvin a friend rather than the hostage he truly is. Engaged in battle with a fearsome magic beast, Alvin is discovered by Carla, who is expected to assist him in his fight. This is when Carla dismantles the world around her and abides by social theory as much as a serial killer, passively coercing everybody she speaks to into following her rules and bending to her whims. And when I describe her, it may conjure sinister images of tyrants and mass manipulators, but this Carla is not. Rather, her will to have companionship drags those around her into chaos, while her uncontrollable impulse to seek praise is unmatched, though at times it'd be difficult to believe she doesn't find joy in her unassuming menace. In short, Carla is written to be as obnoxious and unstoppable as possible given the circumstances, and you can either find it as delightful as she seems to, or be a square who doesn't think it's funny. Poor Alvin, hoping for things to go as they always do for a lowly hero character, could never predict that he would be literally cursed to partnership with her. And in his foolhardy attempts to reason with the situation, he is driven into a world of Carla's shapeless, unexpressive design to the point that even the beast he fights can't help but participate in their bickering until nothing remains of the situation they intended, shifting from a classic fantasy brawl to mocking Alvin's facial reconstruction in the monster's bedroom where they aimlessly find themselves for the night. I adore how predictably Carla hears the Magibeast explain that her kind doesn't have names as we know them, and go mostly by bear, including in their verbal quirks wherein her sentences end with just saying the word bear or kuma, and surmises to call the creature mostly bear, or just mostly for brevity. This stuff's funny, and the entire episode consists of watching this shit show unfold as control slips further and further away, and Carla influences even mostly to play along with whatever the fuck is going on in her head, ending with her essentially receiving consent to steal some shit from Mostly's house that Carla decided she fancied. Alvin's visible frustration and quippy responses only spotlight the absurdity. A straight man lost for words as no one exchange proves fruitful for him. But he's cool too, and knows that despite the bizarre collaboration, he must make the best of it if he is to live a mostly positive life, even if he doesn't have a choice. Personally, I can't wait to see what other bullshit World of Warcraft NPC they will terrorize next. I'm Quitting Heroing, on the other hand, fits nicely in its place, corroborating the usual record of comfortably prosaic shit anime. Again, surprisingly not horrendous, this, it touts a conceptual framework that by itself poses no intrinsic inferiority, but is hasty in loading a hefty Lupara and taking careful aim at its own foot. Here's what I mean. I'm Quitting Heroing is about Leo Demonheart, a brave warrior who recently defeated the Demon Lord and her ferocious henchmen, thereby rescuing the kingdom from her tyranny. Through blatant short-sightedness and hypocrisy, the people of the kingdom decide that Leo's victory is emblematic of uncontrollable power that, with the Demon Queen incapacitated, now serves as the only threat to their peaceful lives. Despite Leo never doing anything that would attest to this villainy, the king, in all his wisdom, does not hear Leo out, and instead decrees that he must be banished from the kingdom to mitigate the unjustified concerns of the many. While the scenario is understandably embittering, it comes off as so entirely illogical that the premise becomes shaky at best. Why the fuck would they actually do this? To move on with the show, you must accept this fatuous reality in which the well-known hero single-handedly fixes the problem for everybody and is then told by everybody to fuck off and die, including by the highest authority in the land, who literally preempts his commandment about Leo with, "I do want you to know I am personally grateful for what you've done for my people, and I believe in your good faith." That's right, the king knows it's bullshit to IRL ban Leo, but does it anyway and adds on, "I know despite this injustice you won't come back to kill me." Man, now that you said that, I'm definitely going for some juicy hot regicide. So Leo goes to the demons and says he wants to join them because nobody else will accept him now. And through some persuasion and boldface exposition provided by reminiscing about Leo's interactions with the bad guys, gets conditionally hired, assuming he can overcome tests provided by the magic demon. Then some internal dialogue from Leo lets us in on the big secret that the Demon Lord ordered her men not to murder civilians, and seeing as the king is a total ass, it's clear that Leo's actually joining the good guys all along, which could be a goodish story about toppling a backwards and corrupt regime, but most likely isn't, and instead it just serves to let us like Leo personally instead of thinking he's vindictive, as well as lessening the impact of his betrayal by the kingdom and his subsequent actions to the point that it makes me wonder why add the extra steps to the reasoning for his joining the opposition at all. I haven't even mentioned the most worthless detail. Leo is very constantly shown to be the strongest man in the world, which he gloats about, meaning this is just another One Punch Man ripoff where no conflict exists at all and misses the mark on why One Punch Man works as satire and none of this other shit does or is fun to watch regardless. Build me up for the first episode about trials you'll put him through to join. What trials? You know there isn't any trials. Do I really need to sit through an episode of oohs and ahs at how nothing is challenging for the guy who already beat everybody challenging him? Get the fuck out of here. The evil generals aren't even that bad. I could maybe even get into them if this show wasn't fat crapola, although it sucks they made the cute animal child nothing but a slightly perverse accessory to Leo because her people fall in love with those who fell them in battle. Great, no, that's great. I wanted a child to stroke his ego constantly. That's just awesome. Ugh. Alright, now here's where shit officially stops being normal and this turns into isekai good, but I wouldn't hold your breath for too long, you'll definitely die. It's your boy, Kongming. I knew just looking at this one that I'd think it's gratifying. I saw a long dead wartime Asian figurehead getting sent to the future and involving himself in popular culture, and I was like, fuck yeah, Samurai Jack is sick. Nobody could ever forget Jack's integration into modernity as he receives his epithet from street kids. And I was right. In fact, Kongming, a famous military strategist from the real-life Shu Han during the Chinese Three Kingdoms period, dies, his final thought a hope that he can reincarnate in a world without war, and wakes up in modern Shibuya during its renowned Halloween street party, and is immediately appreciated by some drunk guys who invite him to party with them, something Kongming assumes to be a ritual of hell because he has no fucking idea what's going on. So similar is this intro, I would believe you if you told me the original author is a Samurai Jack fan. A very hungover Kongming is then assisted by aspiring singer and certified cool girl Eiko Tsukimi, whom Kongming watched perform the previous night, smitten with her voice and this new shit these young punks are calling music. After driving Eiko up a wall with his curiosity about every single present-day subject he sees or hears, including NFTs, which Eiko clearly started to bring on herself at that point, he sets his heart on learning more about music and asks Eiko if she can help him find employment so he can actually do any of that. She sets him up with the manager of the tiny club she works for, who, by some miracle, is such a big Chinese history buff, he becomes enamored with Kongming's dedication to being Kongming, and tells him he can serve drinks. No problem, but he soon realizes that Eiko, his muse, can't get a comfy gig to save her musical life. Kongming declares he will become her military strategist, read as manager, and takes Eiko to a popular ladies' concert for intel. After the show, they just walk up to her dressing room and ask to talk to her, actions they are not tackled by security for. Mia decides to give Eiko a chance to perform at a show she's attending soon, although with ulterior motives to secure an audience for herself, a stalking horse as Eiko's boss describes it. Kongming is undeterred, and this is where the series really shows off. At the the event, Kongming uses an elaborate actual war strategy he previously talked about with the boss man to sway somewhat inebriated concertgoers into sticking around for Eiko's song, a scene that emphasizes the hilarious affection the author clearly has for Kongming's history by cleverly recreating his methods for something as ludicrous, but somewhat realistic, as musician management. What a revitalizing way to interpret an isekai. Certainly not the first fish-out-of-water story of its kind, but an idea with so much more leeway to be creative than those things I like to always insult. Synchronously zany and cohesive, your Boy Kongming treats your eyes to smooth animation brought together tightly with incredible visual composition, crystalline character designs, and of course great music that we can watch Kongming dance to, solidifying the core theme of renewed joy and peace. Unapologetically silly and unquestionably competent, Kongming is a series that doesn't have to do much to stand out and impress. Something good that comes directly as a result of something bad. Something that responds to that evil by being better. What do you call that? As far as I can tell, there is no word that specifically describes this. One might call it a silver lining, but I understand that more as optimism to be found within the bad, a comfort to seek when things go wrong. Serendipity doesn't quite fit right either. It implies some level of chance without any necessary good from bad exchange. I feel as though there must be a word somewhere, maybe in some language out there, that describes this exact definition, but I can't find it. So bear with me for a moment as I try and explain this. I thought in root terms, Latin words for most of English, and searched around, finding an article in what I believe translates from German to the Journal for Comparative Literary History, published in 1896. I assume it comes from another source that I'm unsure of, but the author quotes this phrase in Latin, that you may follow the good and learn better by the example of the evil. And I want to hone in on these two words, malo meliora, malo being Latin for bad or evil, and meliora a Latin word referring to something better or continuing to improve. It's found as a root word for ameliorate in English. Now, it's probably not perfect, but I figure if Shakespeare can just make shit up or misinterpret words from other languages that then get jammed into later languages, who are you to deny me the right to try and do the same? So we'll call it a noun, malo meliora, something that improves or becomes good as a direct result of something evil. I'm not a scholar of language, but if anybody asks, I coined it. The executioner and her way of life cannot exist without a previous inundation of terrible, repetitive isekai shows. It is a direct result and deliberate response to shitty isekai, a malo meliora, and it's interesting to contemplate. One might respond with, there are parodies of isekai already, a la Konosuba, and while I agree that a parody could count as a malo meliora in this way, the executioner and her way of life is no simple parody. It saw the world of medieval fantasy isekai. It witnessed the main character coons that infest our screens, and it said, you want to see isekai, I'll do isekai, and I'll do it better. It is a scathing critique and satire of isekai that concomitantly seeks to build a serious competitor utilizing isekai's traditional grand design. It doesn't just want to make fun of isekai, it wants to improve it, and to do both at the same time is no small feat. Allow me to elaborate. However, if you want to try and see why without me saying anything more about the first couple episodes, go watch it and come back to this video after. Please. The show is about a protagonist, Muto Mitsuki, who gets isekai'd and is instantly shown to be starry-eyed about the whole thing. He's read the light novel, so he knows what lies ahead, a world he must save to earn his 3 beautiful, committed virgin wives. Alas, this is not to be for little Muto. He's thrown out on his ass after his summoners deem him unworthy of their task. Lost and abandoned, he is found by Menno, a priestly girl under the wing of the church, the Faust, who, she explains, has the most political pull among the people, even above kings, akin to Western Europe's Catholic Church of the Middle Ages. This comparison becomes increasingly relevant as it shows among the majority of the architecture of the land and within the symbolism presented in much of the Faust's behaviors and iconography. Menno also explains that Muto is not exactly special and is in fact one of a multitude of otherworlders that are, and have been for a long time, illegally summoned to this realm by a ruling class hoping to defy the Faust's authority. As Menno introduces Muto to the world, it's discovered that otherworlders, always originating from Japan of course, were once so common that culture and architecture had even seen influence of their presence integrated. Alongside friendly banter and familiar isekai babble about fat tits, Menno tells Muto that her job as a holy woman is to help guide lost otherworlders into society, including helping otherworlders achieve their full potential by understanding their special abilities. That is to say, all otherworlders are granted a unique superpower during their isekaiing. Thus, she shepherds Muto in activating his ability, asking of him to link his consciousness with his power and the worldly energy, the ether, that encourages it. Muto has the ability to nullify, he excitedly finds. He speaks aloud that his newfound skill allows him to eradicate that which opposes him, and then... it's not his story. Menno prays for Muto's soul. She is a murderer who must protect the land, killing otherworlders before they even can feasibly use their prowess to destroy. They are innocent, she knows, but the risk they pose is too great, and she knows better than anyone that it cannot be allowed ever again. While there is a benefit to the safety of the majority in her execution, the Faust leverage this against the royals who endanger their dominance. Considering Menno's direct superior is a popely woman named Orwell, one could reasonably doubt the benevolence of the Faust's actions, but Menno knows there is truth in what they say, certainly to some extent. Her job is not finished, however. She received intel from an ignorant Muto that another was summoned alongside him. With her extra gay for her friend Momo, Menno seeks to assassinate an otherworlder being housed by the king, and when she confronts her, things don't go as planned. Akari is not like other otherworlders, both in mortality and in Menno's heart. Akari was foreseen in her dreams. Why she is forced to journey with Akari to Garm, the holy capital, and what lies ahead is uncertain, and I am indisposed to try and take more from the experience for you. It's that uncertainty, in part, that makes this a genuinely compelling narrative. Just let it be known that there is an extraordinary amount of effort placed in developing this world for you. Its history, its culture, its politics, its technology, all of it is laid out in understandable and unique ways without any tete-a-tete deciphering every detail for you. Some things you must wonder as the story takes you there, and yet all of it rings intimate. You've been here before. Anybody watching a few isekai has. It's a medieval fantasy about people from another world, but no, everything's alien too. Even how it structures itself. Ether, for example, is your typical magic energy, but take that and describe its modern use through human advancement and technology and demonstrate its armament in unheard of, terrifying manners, and you have a piece of a puzzle that dares you to question what you are missing out on when you just make of magic a routine. And fuck is it cool, complemented by fun as all hell fights and a sound design of orgasmic, unconventional, I don't even know what, robot and wild animal fisticuffs. Don't even get me started on the music. You are unprepared for how action is perceived in this series when the soundtrack kicks in. And still, the executioner in her way of life offers more. Despite all its strengths as an isekai, it is a satire. Yes, on a surface level it pokes fun at a stupid main character guy making dumb passing comments who is subsequently slaughtered like an animal. Don't get me wrong, I think that's hilarious, but look below the surface and you'll find a potent metaphor floating around its engaging content. Menno's world is anime. Anime that is influenced over time by isekai heroes entering its peripherals. And then, suddenly it dawns on anime world that these isekai things, they won't stop coming, and they're starting to destroy everything else, hindering progress as the world grapples with what to do about it. The Faust seek to snuff out the isekai menace that weakens the world's order, a group of seemingly all women, with some level of facetiousness no doubt, a biting back by the anime girls who exist in worlds designed as predatory in the face of faceless male heroes bringing them to their knees. Surely there are more parallels one could draw when sniffing about, but I really don't believe this to be an overestimation, and even if the metaphor is unintended, it is how I interpret it, left with no choice in an anime landscape actually plagued by passionless uncreativity. I don't know how the metaphor ultimately plays out, nor do I know the full breadth of the message at hand, but it really doesn't make a difference. The executioner in her way of life sought to be something new, something that questioned what more could be done with a beaten dead horse, and regardless of tangible results, it succeeded. But isekai still suck. Get fucked, loser. Gotcha!